Good morning. Welcome to today's Daily Word. Today's Wednesday, December 1st. We are now in the month of December. Almost a whole year has passed again. It's hard to believe. And we are, of course, in the season of Advent as we make our continued preparations for the advent of the Christ child into our lives. Tonight at 6 o'clock, we'll begin our Advent Wednesday nights. You're welcome to join us. There'll be dinner at 6 o'clock. There'll be soup and salad and bread, and Mindy is going to make cookies. And so there'll be lots of food. We'll be done in time for choir members to get to choir practice at 7:30. We're going to talk this year, and it's part of this scripture too. We're going to talk this year about traveling with ancestors. And you know, there are biblical ancestors. It's interesting that Joseph could name his ancestors all the way back for a long line of them. And we're going to talk about our biblical ancestors, but we're also going to talk about our personal ancestors. And one of the fun things that we're going to do is talk about our own Jesse tree and how a shoot comes from the stump. And we're just going to, tonight, we're going to have some fun just naming our ancestors by name and just having some fun with that as we think about how they then have influenced our lives. And then by the time we're done, on December 22nd, hopefully what we will do through our own faith journey then is talk about how where we are in life will influence those who come after us. You know, if you're like me, and many of you are, you have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I think about that a lot, especially with my grandchildren. I have 3 of them and 1 on the way. And I think about how I would influence their faith journey and how someday, hopefully, they'll look back at their pawpaw and talk about how I influenced not just their lives in a whole, but their faith journey. And that's so important to me. As we journey together. You know, on Sunday, Weston was here and they sat clear in the back, but the entire time during church he called out, "Pawpaw, Pawpaw," and he recognizes me in this setting. And of course he was here with me Monday, as you all saw, but those are all important things as we travel together. So from Isaiah, and I love this text. I read it every Advent. We hear these words, Isaiah 11, verses 1 through 3. "A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord." So we all come from somewhere, from someone, from some place, from a story. All of our lives have a story. Our ancestors' lives have a story. I tell the story often of all of my family and what I know of the story of my ancestors. We come from this family line, and those are such important things. We come from somewhere. We are where we're physically located, and some of us have never left. But then from some of us, like me, you know, we come from a different hometown, and we come from somewhere. And wherever we are in life, whatever our life's journey is like, we come through this journey carrying bits of pieces of previous locations, previous stories. We carry those bits and pieces with us in our hearts and in our memories. Our story is uniquely and remarkably our own. And you know, it's interesting. I think about this a lot. When Diane and I moved to Sydney 32 plus years ago, you know, we didn't know a soul. And it was an interesting, challenging time. But from our hometown, from Kenton, from Forest, from Kenton High School, from Riverdale High School, we brought these bits and pieces of our lives with us. And we journeyed and we brought our own life story. We had just been recently married. We actually didn't know each other very long before we got married and moved to Sydney. And our lives then began to stretch. And the bits and pieces that we brought with us were infused in the lives of people we met. Now, all these years later, I know so many people, and I'm blessed to do that. Our family line, this idea that from a stump, the stump of Jesse, this shoot rises up, and this branch bears fruit. And in all of our lives, we have that. We join in the season of Advent, and we light candles and we add to them. But we're reminded that in this season of Advent, we open ourselves to the story of Jesus once again. And the story isn't all of a sudden just doesn't pop out of the air. You go all the way back to Isaiah. And Isaiah talks about this coming Messiah. It was in the works. It was bubbling up, if you will, in creation. It was making its way with this new covenant that was about to spring up in the midst of the world. And here we are at the beginning of our Advent journey together, and we prepare ourselves for Advent that leads us towards Christmas. And I think it's a good reminder for us to know that this line of Jesus, this shoot from the stump of Jesse, our lives, and how our lives have been affected by our ancestors, and how then for us. And I think this is important for me. Maybe it's because of where I'm at in life. Maybe it's because, my life's journey's changed. I have grandchildren now. I think about retiring. Maybe even today I might retire. I think about the legacy of faith that we all are living in together. And I'm reminded that this God who gave words to Isaiah, we're going to hear from Malachi on Sunday, who gave words to Malachi. Malachi, the very last book of the Old Testament. And then there's this 400-year gap where scholars say God had gone silent. Even Malachi said to us that things were going to change, that somehow God, was going to intervene in the world, and that this God would come to us in a different kind of way. And so I think it's interesting for us in this faith journey. Now we've moved into a new month, and maybe now we can look towards Advent a little differently because it's December. But I think for us, we need to be reminded that this story that's uniquely ours is also a story that I think reminds us that we are made up of the breath of God in our own genetic configuration. And we are part of this root, this family line that has gone before us. And that you and I are now this special branch from that root, if you will. And you and I now are part of this orchestra, and we get to make the noise. We get to play the instrument. We get to share the story of good news. We get to have it propel us into the future. God brings people into our lives, and they cross our paths, and they change us. The season of Advent calls us to a deepening reverence, a brimming kind of worship, and this expectant reflection on who Jesus is in our lives and how it affects us. I'll be able to tell stories, and hopefully you'll come on Wednesday night and tell stories, but I'll tell stories of my ancestors. and what we did together. And some of the great things that now that I'm older, much older as the case may be, now that I'm older, I think about some of those things that I heard and some of the stories that we shared together. And I'm reminded that in those stories and in this stump where you and I have come from, it's there that we find the purposes of God acted out for the sake of us and for the sake of the world. I'd like to think, and I hope that for some of you and for my kids and my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, and my grandkids, that I will have made a difference in your life, that somewhere down the road, you'll say of me, Jim, or Pastor Jim, or Paul, or whatever you call me, that you're part of my shoot that's grown up, and that our faith journey together has been enriched because we've shared it together. So it's interesting that Isaiah, all these hundreds of years before, gives us these powerful words, reminding us that Jesus didn't come as a baby in a vacuum, but that God planned it. God knew what the world needed. And the story, God's story, continues to be told in you and continues to be told in me. And importantly for me, forever long, I do this, whether I retire today or tomorrow or 5 years or 10 years from now. For me, it's important that this spiritual root system, that we make it go deeper, that we stop skimming it along the surface, and that our roots might go deeper as we do that together. So thanks for joining me this morning. Thanks for being part of my faith journey. Thank you for being part of the shoot that comes up with me. Thank you for the bits and pieces of my life that you've allowed to be in your lives. Hope you'll join me tonight at 6 o'clock. Join all of us tonight at 6 o'clock. Come and eat. There'll be good soup and food. And then we'll share in this conversation about ancestors. Know of God's love that surrounds you this first day of December. And know of my love for all of you. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Have a great day.